Well, Bruce Dern, after all these years working in TV and movies, you finally get your first Emmy Award nomination this summer. Well, what does that mean to you?
Well, frankly, I was surprised, and I was surprised because I didn't have a lot to do on that show, on Big Love. I don't know how many episodes they did, 50-something. I was only in like 27 or 29, something like that. And in this last year, the year I got nominated for, I was only in 5. And I never thought that I had enough to do in the show, but that's my ego, but enough to do to make any kind of an impact. So when they called me and told me that I was nominated, I was knocked out by it. I was equally knocked out by the nomination for Coming Home as an Oscar, the same thing. I mean, we were up against The Deer Hunter, and I think between the two of us, Coming Home and The Deer Hunter, we won every Academy Award that year except 2. And it was kind of like 1939, when they had all those fabulous movies in the same year. And I don't know how that played out, but I know a lot of people missed out on things that would have gotten any other year. The excitement for me about this is that I've always felt in awards like Oscars or Emmys or whatever they are, the nomination is the win. What happens after that is just a matter of do you get enough or don't you get enough, And so I've always been very honored by just the fact that a bunch of folks got together and thought I could act, So.
I mean, it's a pretty nice compliment. I'd like to talk about the episode that's been submitted on your behalf, Bruce, Divorce. And one of the highlights of that episode is your interplay with Grace Zabriskie. Can you tell us about working with her? Because obviously she was the person you worked with the most on that show, right?
Well, Grace is one of the different folks. Let's put it that way. She is a fabulous partner to work with. She is very embracive in terms of not being afraid to express herself to you or to anybody else about displeasures and pleasures. But she was as good a partner as I could hope for 5 years on the screen. I mean, you're only as good as the people that you play with in films. There's no I in the word team. And movies are teamwork. And actors together are teammates, really. And Nicholson was a great teammate. Grace was a great teammate. I'm about to do a movie with Laura. I'm sure she'll be a great teammate. But what you look for in somebody with Grace and I, the first 4.5 years, she tried to kill me every goddamn show. I mean, or she or somebody who she put up to it. And then the last year, we kind of turned it on everybody, and that was the Sheffer and Olsen, the two showrunners who also created the show and produced it. That was their gift to us, was like letting us turn that corner, particularly me, the last half of the last year, and be able to come up with a different kind of Frank than just the normal a-hole, I've always noticed my grandfather, Dern, was the first non-Mormon governor of Utah. And from 1924 to 1932, and then he became Secretary of War in Roosevelt's first cabinet. But so we were around Mormons all my life, even though I lived in Illinois. But the only thing I noticed that we tried to capture, at least Grace and I, in our characterization of us as a couple, is they can't look you in the eye. And people always say to me, why is that? I said, because every one of them's up to something. I know if you look in their eyes that you're going to see what it is. So that's what I liked. But Grace was great. She's a fabulous, fabulous actress.
Bruce, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned Coming Home and your Oscar nomination. We're an awards website, so we love talking about these kind of things. Take us back to that experience, and what was it like being a nominee at the Academy Awards that year?
Well, I had just finished a Broadway play about Sinclair Lewis and Dorothy Thompson called Strangers. And I got back to Hollywood probably 3 days before the ceremony, so I missed all the pre-hype and everything. So I walked in there that night, and I remember as I walked in, I recognized the little guy from the company that adds up the ballots. I'd seen his face from the years before, and he had envelopes in his hand, and I realized he's the guy, and he smiled at me. And I thought, oh boy, I was wrong, but it was great, and I liked it because John Wayne was honored, and of course I just killed him a few years earlier in the Cowboys, and he looked down at me and he said, I hadn't seen him since then, when we were in the audience and he was getting ready to walk up on the stage. I'd taken nothing but heat for the last 5 years since I did the Cowboys. And I mean heat from everywhere. No, any restaurant I'm in, any bar, in a cab, somebody says, you're the guy who killed my buddy. And as he walked up to get ready to get his award, he looked at me and he pointed his finger at me and he says, I told you, how they were going to hate you. So anyway, that was always key with me. But in coming home, first of all, there's the pleasure of Hal Ashby. And a guy who really has been overlooked now. He wasn't overlooked when we were making the films. But by the end of the 80s, it was like considered, well, he's just one of these guys that made 6 or 7 movies and didn't make another. Well, he didn't make another because he passed away, number one. But it's pretty good 7 movies. I mean, when we finished Coming Home on the 18th of May, 1977, he was in production on his next movie 10 days later and done with it by the middle of August. And that was Being There. So he made Coming Home and Being There back to back with no break. And he replaced the original director on Coming Home, who was John Schlesinger. When the millennium came, somebody from TV Guide called me up and they said, we're talking about films of decades, and we called you because you were in a lot of good films in the 70s. What was your favorite film of the 70s? You guys will never guess what it was. Breaker Morant.
Oh, yeah?
Fantastic
movie. The reason is that was England's Vietnam.
Yeah.
And they laid it on you guys, or the poor New Zealand bastards. Somebody was going to go fight the English soldiers' battles.
Yeah.
And they sent the Light Horse Grenadiers.
Yeah.
Or is it they're called, or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
And what a fabulous movie. And it's just, that speech that Jack Thompson gives in the courtroom in Breaker Morant, as good a piece of acting as I've ever seen in my career. I mean, he was tremendous. Why he's not also in Hollywood or, making American movies, I don't know, but we miss a guy like that. He is absolutely fabulous. Jeffrey Rush is fabulous. People always say to me, have you ever seen a performance that you don't think you could have done? Yeah, I've seen 3. I could have never given Jeffrey Rush's performance in Shine. It's beyond belief. I mean, I've seen David Helfgott in concert, and he was David Helfgott. I mean, I can't believe that he did that, number one. Number 2 was Roy Scheider in All That Jazz.
Yeah.
He just was Bob Fosse. And I knew Fosse was kind of a friend, and he was just got it down. And the third one was Murray Abraham and Amadeus. And not a guy who you would think of, in terms of a whole career of great performances, but he left one there. Unbelievable.
Anyway, we could talk about this all day, and I'm sure you'd like to, but we really want to ask you a couple more questions before we let you go. I would like to know, Bruce, given that over your very long career, you've played a lot of, shall we say, crazies, villains, bad guys. Do you enjoy that more than playing just a regular run-of-the-mill guy?
Well, I was on, I forget what year it was last year Johnny Carson had his show, and I was on his show. And he said to me, the same question you said, why, only he didn't say you have. He said, why do you always insist on playing these weirdnesses and crazos and people like that? I said, well, I don't look at them as weirdnesses or crazos. I just look at them as human beings, as people. And he said, but how would you describe it? I said, well, there are always people that live out beyond where the buses run. So they're just a little beyond what we're used to. Can't quite get to them. And I've always enjoyed that. I had to start early in my career doing that. There was through the last 2 years of the 50s and then the 60s, there was nothing but episodic television and movies. And when you were like Nicholson or myself or Dennis or Hopper or any of us that came along in that era, Dennis Hopper was a movie star. I mean, when Jack and I came to Hollywood, Dennis Hopper had been in Giant, he'd been in Rebel Without a Cause. I mean, he was like as big as Jimmy Dean to us. So he was a star. But, we were always the fifth cowboy from the right. And I learned one thing because I began my career with Mr. Kazan. And Mr. Kazan said, if you're going to have to do that, and that appears to be all they're doing for you right now, because I was working essentially for him. I mean, I was one of his guys. And he gave me my first movie and my first and second plays and so on and so on. He said, you better be the goddamn most interesting fifth cowboy on the right. So that's what I tried to do all the time. Not try and be interesting, just pick things about myself that were a little different. Like we had to Warren Oates and I had to kidnap Miss Kitty and in a Gunsmoke in the saloon. And Marshall Dillon, of course, has to then come in and deal with us. And it was neat because it was about 4 years before I did the Cowboys and had to make John Wayne and treat John Wayne like he was a little dog and kick him around and then shoot him in the back. And when Matt Dillon came into the saloon to get Miss Kitty, I had to do the same kind of stuff to him. I made him take his boots off and crawl to the bar and ask for a drink. And that wasn't in the script, but that was what Brucey came up with, So anyway, I've just been thrilled to be cast. Let's put it that way. When they cast me in an area of having to do that stuff, I'll do it. Anyway.
Well, we had one more question for you today. We talked about Oscars earlier and performances and so forth. You've been an Oscar voter for a long time. What do you look for when you're marking that ballot, when you're nominating people, as well as when you're marking the ballot for winners? What kind of performances, what do you look for in a performance that sticks out to you?
Well, I start with mine.
Check your name off first. And then
talked one year when we first started getting nominated for things. And he said, make sure that if you're going to vote for me, put me in the first position because it's preferential balloting. So in other words, if there's 5 people you have to vote for, then make sure you put as many number ones with his name in it. I said, no, you'll always be number 2 because I'm going number 1 on my ballot. I mean, you're sure as hell not going to put your name second, so why should I? But when I vote, I tell you something. George C. Scott was always kind of a hero to me because he passed on the whole thing. He won 2, passed on it. And his theory was that it's not a competition, and therefore it shouldn't be. That's kind of why I always felt that if they're going to have it, the nomination is the win. You know what I'm saying? Other than that, it's kind of a who gets the most and who doesn't. And it's not that it's unfair. It's just there's sometimes you go to a set, you get in scenes with actors, and they're there to try and win an award. And I'm just there to try and deal with the humanity of the people we're playing. And awards are not anything that I've ever thought about. I got a star on the Hollywood Boulevard, and I never even dreamed of that. I mean, I thought when I first came to Hollywood, it was the smallest town. It was smaller than Santa Maria. which is just up north on the coast, which is very small. But Hollywood looked like just a small town to me, especially on a Friday or Saturday night. And it was, and somehow the Oscars, I know why they have to have them. They have to have them because it's necessary. The Academy needs the television revenue and so forth and so on. And it's a nice thing, and it's a wonderful party, and it's wonderful to be a part of it. I remember somebody came up to me when Laura and Diane and I got our stars on Hollywood Boulevard last fall. Somebody came up and said, "You know that you're the only family in the history of the business, mother, father, and child, that have all been nominated for Academy Awards?" I didn't know that. Diane didn't know that. She probably did, but didn't admit it. And Laura didn't know that. And I'm very proud of that because it shows that when Diane and I looked at Laura, and Laura said, "What's the drill, Dad?" The drill was, learn how to dance, number one, meaning dance around the problems on the set all day long that have nothing to do with you, but just go with the flow. Don't hide in your dressing room. And number two, take risks. And I've always been an actor who's interested in the riskiness of the roles that I play, and sometimes in the movies I play. I mean, who else would do a movie like Wonton Ton, the dog that saved Dolly? I mean, that's a risk taker. A movie about making Rin Tin Tin a movie star, and I loved it. My friend David Picker produced it, and Michael Winner directed it. Now, here's a comedy about a German Shepherd becoming a movie star, and they picked Michael Winner, who directed Death Wish. But he was a good guy. I really liked him.
Love it. Well, Bruce, we honestly really do wish you all the best for the Emmys this September. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and we think it's a really great tribute to your character, Frank, on the show after 5 years to finally get some recognition from the TV Academy.
Thank you so much. Is Big Love on the air in Australia?
Yeah, on and off. It's been on and off on SBS, and it has quite a following too, so that's pretty good.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you have any Mormons in Australia?
Yeah, we have a very big Mormon community in Australia. Definitely.
Really?
Yeah, yep. So.
Well, there's somewhere over, while you're looking through the Mormon community, look for Uriah Heep.
Okay.
When the Brits sent wasn't Uriah Heep the guy that David Copperfield got sent off to Australia?
I don't know. It's too early in the morning for me to have all these facts in my head.
Anyway, thank you so much for your interest. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you, Bruce. Good luck.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you very much.